Right, so we're going to go ahead and get started here to kick off our Gradient 101 sessions for 2022. Kind of crazy to think that we've hit that. So just a couple housekeeping items as we get started. Just keep in mind that if you would like access to the links and the resources that are available in this presentation, feel free to grab that link right there in the corner, or you can get the one from the chat. You'll have access to that after the presentation. This is being recorded, so if you had registered for this one or any other sessions, we will send you the recording once we're all done so that you can share this with your other cohorts and friends that are using GradeCam. I am Kate Pyland. I'm a customer success coach with GradeCam. On the call today with me today is Katie. She's our director of customer experience, and she will be manning the chat. So feel free to throw any questions in there related to the presentation, or even we'll have time for questions at the end if it's unrelated, but we can still help you with stuff in GradeCam. Just a couple shout out to Donna and Busy, who are in our support department. You may have seen emails or calls from them as well, because they are absolutely there on the other line to help you out as needed. So we're always here. We're trying to make sure we have the best experience to support you as you go. So here is a schedule for our upcoming Gradient 101 sessions. Today, we are going to talk about performance-based assessment. So that's where we're going to jump right in so that you guys can kind of get really started. We'll make this quick and easy with a bunch of resources to get you going. So we're going to go over a step-by-step on kind of building out those performance-based assessments, which is one of my in particular favorite areas of assessing, because I was a former art teacher in the classroom. So everything I did was a performance or construction or a task or design. So this really fits into my wheelhouse of things that I enjoy to do. I'll provide you with some pro tips, both in creating those assessments as well as reviewing those assessments and what that can look like, and then some extra credit, just some extra things to take you that much further with your assessing practices in your classroom. So we're going to go ahead and get started in our step-by-step and walk in through different ways to create different types of performance assessments. And these can come in a variety of ways. I'm going to start with the rubric, because that's probably the most common one on a typical multiple question assignment. And then we're actually going to touch into one of our new assignments, or not brand new, but if you haven't seen it, but one of our unheard ones so much, is our observational form, which is another way to review performance tasks taking place in the classroom. So I'm going to jump over to GradeCam, and I am going to actually create a brand new assignment because I want to create a rubric. So if I was grading an art project or a project in my classroom or a writing assignment, that is really based on the student's performance. And there can be all range of scores that can go with that. And it's not necessarily, did you get it right? Did you get it wrong? It's just, how did you explain or demonstrate your learning? So we're going to do a multiple question assignment, very similar to what you've done with a quiz in the past. And we're going to call this writing. And I'm going to only look at 4 criteria when I am actually reviewing an assignment. So if I go into save, and this pops me right in. This looks very similar to any quiz if you've done one in the past, but seeing how you can use this in a performance type manner. So this actually breaks into a couple different question types that you can use that are already within the GradeCam system. So we go down to teacher graded, because these are pretty key when you're creating a performance task. Is it something that's being observed by the teacher? There's lots of nuances to how that can be right or how it could be wrong or what needs to be added. So this allows GradeCam, has you pull that in to be able to review what is taking place from that student, and it's not automatically graded, is because there's a lot of nuances there. If you are doing a mix and match of the teacher graded or the auto graded questions, you may have some multiple choice, but then asking kids to write an extended response or give a 5-minute speech in the front of the classroom. So you can blend these types of questions. I'm going to change these to rubric with points, and this is going to give me a rubric scale. So a couple things to keep in mind, and let me jump back over here, is you have the choice to do a scale or points. I'm going to point out the differences. You can use a multiplier. So if you want to weight certain areas or categories a little bit different, you can do so. And we're going to talk about if you're doing this online versus paper, what does that look like? So if I go back over here, I'm in rubric and points. I can do scale or points. There is a video linked in that presentation if you would like to look at it that goes a little bit more in depth, but a scale is going to provide, do you want this to be a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, however you want to go through there, or specific points. Scale may be a little easier to point, click, score, but specific points allows you to give more partial credit, such as I want to give them 2.2345, whatever you want to give them on scores. So you would actually type in that response when you're scoring it from the student. So there's a little bit difference there. You could also allow for more easily giving like more points beyond the max point. So if the max point was 5, but you want to allow extra credit up to 6, specific points will allow you to do that. Whereas the rubric scale kind of locks you into those scores that are listed in your scale that you've listed there. You adjust your scale to however you'd like it. So I'm going to make this one up to 4, 5, 6, just so you can see how that lays out. And then the multiplier. So when you're actually grading a performance task, there may be certain categories or areas that have more weight or more power in that assessment, such as you really want to look at the content and evidence that a student that may have more importance when you're looking at your score over the craftsmanship in terms of did they punctuate properly or did they have capitalization in the right spot. Those are important, but it may not be as important as the evidence that they're providing for this particular writing assignment in that performance task. So that multiplier, I may double that just so it shows more weight to that particular category. You can continue to add standards just like you have any other questions that you have done within GradeCam before with the assignments. I'm going to hit my next, and I'm going to actually bulk edit these last ones so you can see what this looks like in bulk. Hold on, make sure I got them all. Yep, I did. Go ahead and hit rubric with points. So I can adjust the scale again. The scales do not have to be the same and the multipliers do not have to be the same. I would just manually enter those slightly different. Another option that you have for a type of performance question to include was listed down here at the bottom, and this is the open response capture. The nice thing about an open response capture, and it's one of my favorite questions, is the fact that it actually provides that area. So this is great if you hand the paper to the students that they're going to handwrite in a response, they're going to draw a chart, or they're going to draw a graph. That can be right there. Online, they're allowed to type in their text. But if I'm an art teacher that is looking at an art project, I don't necessarily need this capture area because I'm looking at the project and that's not something I can put in front of the scanner to be able to scan that into the system to be graded. So just thinking about the different situations that you would like to do for your performance task, or if this is a speech, that's something that's not captured on a form, but you can still grade it on the form. The scoring for the open response capture is exactly the same, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, or if you want to go by specific points and giving it a max points from there. Save, wouldn't let me go through. So with that, keeping in mind is how does this appear to the student? So if the students are taking the test on a paper form, this is going to look like this. And let me zoom in so that you guys can see this much more clearly. So you'll see here that these are little bubbles that say 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or whatever scale that I created. So this is actually an area that the teacher would fill in on the form. The students could fill it in, but this is probably meant more for that teacher to be able to put it there. This open response area is where students would handwrite in a response. So if they were to write out a specific sentence that you asked them correcting certain pieces, they would write that in there, which would then be captured. So it's more on the performance because it's not just a straight yes or no, they got this correct or not answer. All right, so that's kind of looking into those different types of questions that are already available to you with your existing GradeCam multiple question assignment that you may have seen in the past, but you may not have touched on those particular question types. Now I'm going to jump back over here to my presentation because I want to go into some of those pro tips on how you can take this that much further. Oops, I forgot to show you what this looks like online. My bad. I meant to do that. So let me quickly go into online so I can show you. This is just a preview of what this is going to look like for students. So you'll see here that when I have a rubric question for online, it will say teacher will assign it. So it doesn't actually let the students fill anything in because the teacher is going to fill that in. That's why it doesn't show. The open response or the open capture is just a text box area for students to type in a response, write in the response right there. This is then sent to the teacher, which they can then grade either by points or by that scale. So just knowing how those display slightly different from a paper form to the digital version online. Get a sneak peek at one of my other assignments there. So talking about that, both of these have videos that can explain that a little bit further if you want to dig a little bit deeper into seeing which one's going to be the best type of performance question for you as you're working through with your students. Now, a couple pro tips just to kind of amp up what you're doing when you're creating these rubrics. You can do custom question labels. So I am that teacher that likes to have a little bit more organization to everything that I'm doing. And I'm going to do this in here just a little bit. I can actually modify this label here so that it says CON matches my content over here, org, organization, development, language, so on. So if you are somebody that likes to have just that little bit additional clarity to your rubrics, you can always edit that question label as well. Again, I open my question editor, and then right here it says question number. I would just change that to CON. You are limited to 4 characters, so you just kind of have to be really judicious about what you're kind of putting in there. And hit next. And this one may be language. And I know I had them, I forgot what they were, so I'm just typing them in right now. So they don't have to be numbers. And you'll see that that just provides additional clarity so that if a student's looking at the rubric in comparison to what's on the form or online, just helps them out and makes it a little bit more clear on what they're trying to score there. You can also go into paperless grading, and this is a really nice capability that if you are a teacher that sits in the back of the classroom or sitting in the classroom as your students are giving a speech or presentation, you can still collect those scores within GradeCam without having to bubble in the form. Now, I do want to show, and it's be really tiny on the screen, but here's my paper form. I could absolutely do this as a paper form that's laminated that I use all the time for all my writing assessments. I can fill it out and scan them as normal. But if you're a teacher that just doesn't want to have that additional paper, you can do paperless grading. So let me hit save just to get my last question in there and my response. Now I'm not going to fill in the open responses because I don't do that from here. But if you have to manually enter in a grade and you're sitting in the class and you're watching your students, I click my class, I can hit English 11, I choose my student and I hit add. Now, as I'm watching that student in the class, or if it's a video, I can split screen my screen over if I would like to, and I can just score them right here as I'm watching them. So that way I don't have to print out the form, but I can still collect it, have those standards attached, get that immediate access to data. It's all right there. And I can do this on a mobile device as well. So if you have an iPad, it works really slick. Hit save. So I can put in Louisa and you'll see her from there. Some other kind of pro tips, and I just wanted to show how you can add just different kind of creative ways of using that open response, or using, it's not the open response, excuse me, using the rubric or performance type question. I have an assignment here and I want to show you, and I had it up and I lost it. So let me go back into it. So this particular assignment is set up to be 3 open response questions. So that's definitely based in that performance atmosphere, is asking students to explain a little bit further based on some reading that I have attached to it. You can add this online so that if I were to show you this online version and preview, there we go. Click on that little icon so I can see preview right there. I'm just going to move my heads around so that students would click on the article or the topic that they would like to pursue, hit start assignment, and this will all put it in there so they can read the article and answer right here in the text that I can then grade this performance on that rubric scale. Is how did they provide the evidence? Maybe I required to have 2 or 3 statements per section or area. So you can kind of come up with your criterion from there, but this is just kind of breaking down those performances in terms of asking for pro, con, and then they have to write. They actually have to write out some pieces. Another way of doing that. Another example is if you want to use that paper form, which I showed you guys before. Let me back out so you can see the whole thing. If you create and still want to use paper forms and you do a generic form, you can always add that straight to a document right next to your rubric scale. So students, as they're writing an article review, so it could be the exact same thing as before, as giving students an article, they have to write pro con statements, and then they have to write out their essay. I have listed my rubric criterion right here, added that GradeCam form so that when the students write it, I can review it and bubble in the forms, and then I place it under my document camera and I scan it right there. Okay, I did see a question come in, so I'm just going to, how do they access their online assessment with article and short answers? If they are as a school account, you would have students log in. That login, and I don't want to tell you wrong, so I want to make sure I get you the right one, is actually if you log into your, if you're in the login screen of your GradeCam, you see right here, it says not a teacher. It'll switch them over to the student login and students can log in from there. All school and district accounts and paid teachers licenses do have access to be able to log in to view this online. If you would like to learn a little bit more about Student Portal and the accesses and how to assign it from there, Katie will put some resources in there for you. So awesome. Yeah, and once they log in, then they can go from there. But we have a lot of great resources to get you walking from that point. Great question though. So that's my last one, was adding a rubric to a template. So it's just showing different ways of collecting performance task data so that you can still pull in some wonderful data to review those reports and break down per section. You know, how is my class doing overall on content and being able to present that content? Is that an area or something that we need to work on as a class? So last extra credit is the observational assignment. And this is probably one of my favorite things to do as well, because it's just such a unique form to thinking about if you are having a class discussion and there's lots of things going on, or you do center activities where some kids are doing this and some kids are doing that, is you can actually create an observation form that puts all of your class on one form so that you can grade them kind of all different times, and you handwrite those responses in. So to create an observation form is actually back here. Let me go back to the homepage, create assignment, and it's right here in observational assignment. If you would like to see a tutorial on how to do that, there's a little pink star right there right now that you can click on that, and this will walk you through how to create this in your classroom, and just kind of gives you very basic information. So if I click that there, and then it's going to say, what do we need to do? So I'm going to say this is obs and centers. I have maybe 3 centers going on. Maybe I have 4 centers, or I have 4 things that I'm looking for as centers are taking place. I hit save, and it's going to give me 4 items. So now here I can adjust this. So this may be, oops, I'm going to call this one working on alphabet. Oops, can't type today. And so with their alphabet, they're maybe doing something, making sure they have them in the right order, or whatever task they're working on from there. This one might be capitalization, just kind of coming up with things on the spot. But this provides my different criterion that I'm looking for as I'm walking around viewing my centers, or if students are doing a lot of things all at one time. All of that's taking place right here. So if I'm going to get my last one in place, is I'm just going to call it speech. It's kind of generic what that gives there. I can provide max points. I just didn't list that out right at this time because I'm kind of rushed through to make sure you get the form so you can see what this looks like. It's just slightly different. You pick the class. So this is filled out by the teacher. I'm going to go to my early childhood class. This is filled out by the teacher, and it's listed out. I'm going to generate it just so it's a little bit larger for everybody to see. So here are those criterion, or those are my centers right across the top. Maybe this could even be, I've seen teachers do it that they have them doing like an IXL lesson or something online, but then they just ask the student to show them their score, so they go look at it and then they handwrite the score in here for that student once they know they've hit that. This also helps with keeping on track as who's completed what standard, or excuse me, what center. But you'll see I have all my students and I have my criterion across the top. Once you've got this all filled in and you got all the scores in there that you need, you place it in your document camera or use your phone and you scan it, and it brings all those scores into GradeCam so that you can still tie it to standards, look at that data, process those reports, or if you want to transfer this as like their weekly score for centers, that can go out to your gradebook if you're using the grade transfer system. Okay. So the observation form is kind of something a little bit different that not a lot of people know about. So we did provide some additional information there, as well as some inspiration. If you look at this PDF here, that just kind of gives you different ways or ideas of how you could maybe use an observation form within your classroom. There are some additional articles and videos kind of around just data and looking at performance assessment beyond just your typical multiple choice quiz. We just wanted to really challenge you guys to think of different ways of using it. Well, along with all of the performance assessments that you're creating, you may be looking at personal standards. So you're looking at maybe there's specific DOK levels that you really want to make sure you're hitting, and so you can create personal standards based on those levels and still tie them to your assessments. Creating custom performance bands on where do they fall, maybe in 3 levels, you can adjust that, and as well as your gradebook transfer if you want to get all those grades over into your gradebook very easily. So with that, I'm kind of wrapping things up a little bit. I'm going to provide some time for some questions as well. I know that was a lot of information, but just keep in mind this is recorded, so you guys have access to this at another time. Okay, so if you have questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Katie, did I answer everything that needed to be answered?
You did. I passed along some resources related to Portal and some of our previous GradeCam 101 sessions. But it looks like everyone is good to go. We can stop recording though and see if anybody wants to ask questions, and we'll hang on here if anyone has anything specific.